Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Hail Varsity Radio on a Saturday morning. Nice to have you along. My name is Mark Kraynak. We are here with Elijah Herbel. Herbal or Herbal? Do I go hard H?
I believe the family way to say it is with the hard H. Yes, that would be correct. But I mean, it's no difference to me. I know you're talking to me. It's like,
well, I know, but I don't want to. Your family's probably listening. Somebody in your family that cares about you. Somebody that cares about you is listening. And they hear me call you Herbal, they're like, God, this guy. So
the thing is it wouldn't be the first time for the family. And then I've already dug my own grave by making my name on social media Herbal Essences, which, I mean, the brand is pronounced Herbal. So I've dug my own grave there. I've come to expect it at this point that my last name is just however people want to pronounce it.
Do you ever regret that decision, going with Herbal Essences as your Twitter handle?
A little bit. The problem
sometimes is
like, it's a great name. It's creative. It's like I enjoy it, but also it kind of becomes who you are at that point. Once you've had it for so long, people just go, "Oh, Herbal Essences." Like that's just who I am now at this point. So it's there's the give and the take, but
yeah. I mean, it makes a lot more sense than going with like Garnier Fructis. Something, right? Because there's at least the connection with your name. And Damon Barr is on the board, much easier to pronounce. We are pronouncing that right.
Yeah, much harder to confuse that one.
It's not Damon Bahar, it's Barr. You got that?
You got that.
Schmidt is on assignment in Arizona.
If you can't tell by now.
Yeah, he'll be back. Yeah, exactly. He'll be back next week. And, Elijah, we were, talking deeply about what our show could be about today. And I think we have a challenge upon ourselves here. I think it is to avoid being dramatic today and focusing on the drama that surrounds the Husker football program. Because if you think about it, it's pretty much been soap opera radio since 2015, and it's not even our fault. I'm not saying that we get dramatic about it. It's just there's been so much drama surrounding the program for so long that it's easy to just slip into that and to talk about it because there are so many things like Oklahoma Gate. I mean, the fact that there is even a thing called Oklahoma Gate tells you a lot. Like, how is there an Oklahoma Gate? There should not be but there is. There was an Oklahoma Gate. There's been a lot of that kind of stuff. And so I think we should try to have a show today where we completely refrain from those elements. And I don't know how we would totally define that. And I don't even know if it's possible. But I think it's worth a shot. Do you think it's possible?
I've just reached the point where after the last 5 seasons, it feels like everything around the Husker football program just is drama. Like, even if it's like in the 1990s wouldn't have been drama, but now because it's 2021 and we've haven't made a bowl game in 5 years or however long it's been, like it just becomes it naturally lends itself towards drama being made because people care so much.
Yeah. Well, look, you guys are around the show daily, obviously, with Chris. Is there ever a day without it?
Drama?
Yeah, where it's just like straight up. No. Let's break down and discuss like the actual football, like the actual position groups, because spring's coming. Spring, what is it? Start Monday? Monday, right?
Monday, yeah.
It's like, come on, they finish up winter conditioning. Here comes spring football.
Let me look at my calendar here. Is it Monday or is it a week from Monday? I think it might be a week from Monday.
You notice how I went non-specific with Monday. Could be any Monday. Right? I didn't say this Monday. Next Monday. Just said Monday. But right. So spring football's coming. Winter conditioning just wrapped up. I just think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I think we stay away from Oklahoma Gate. I think we stay away from, did Moose say this or Frost say that or players transferring? And
what I'll say though is even just talking about the play on the field, it's going to naturally lend itself to the conversation turning dramatic anyway. You talk about the quarterback position and boom, you got drama. Talk about the offense and you're going to talk about Wandale and JD and all that. It lends itself towards drama. Defensive side of the ball, I think is pretty drama free this year. I mean, you're only really replacing DiCaprio Boodle from that defense as Colin Miller too at middle linebacker, but you kind of know who's going to step in at middle linebacker. When you saw the play last year of Henrich and kid from North Star, his name slipping me. Reimer, yeah. So, I mean, defense drama-free, but, even just looking at what's on the field for the offense, I feel like that there's just drama in and itself with that.
Look, okay, and maybe we have to define drama, right? Okay. Look, there's always going to be natural drama with any team. Just, who starts, who doesn't, who plays well, who doesn't. Like, that kind of drama I'm okay with. That's not the drama I'm talking about. I'm talking about the stuff that's, sort of avoidable, causes strife, creates headlines that has pretty much zero to do with on the field, right? Like it just doesn't have anything. It's it's things like players departing from Lincoln, Nebraska forever to go somewhere else. That's dramatic, right? That's not really about the play on the field. That's Luke McCaffrey, Wandale Robinson, these people just bailing. Warner, right? That's different. I'm talking but yes, the drama of who will start at quarterback or who will start at this position, who will start at that. But that's all fair game, and I think that's okay. And I think we start that now with the offense.
Okay.
I think it starts right now, and we just this is a no drama Saturday.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Going on. There's enough of that going on. I do not think we'll be successful, but we're going to try. We're going to really try. And so let's do that. Let's throughout the show, let's break down the different position groups. And the drama within the groups is totally fine. Let me talk about that. And you mentioned it. There is definitely more intrigue on the offensive side of the ball than there is on the defensive side of the ball. You kind of know what you're going to get on the defensive side of the ball. It's sort of like whatever names or faces arise on defense this year is sort of gravy because you kind of already know what's going to happen there. So we'll save defense for later. Let's start with offense, and let's start with where it all starts. Elijah, Herbel, the offensive line.
Let's go. My favorite topic.
You played offensive line as well, right? So you're an expert, complete expert. You know absolutely everything about offensive line because you played in high school, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty much the authority of offensive line play within the state of Nebraska. I mean, I can't think of anyone Chris has ever had on the show that knows more about offensive line play than me.
Yeah, I really don't know why you're not coaching.
No, I don't know why I'm not in the NFL.
It's kind of hard to. I don't really understand it either. What went wrong? Maybe we should talk about this drama.
I think it was my unathletic parents. I think that was the problem.
Okay, let's look at.
I blame them.
Way to raise their spirits at 7:14 in the morning. So
they're not listening. They're still asleep. Are you kidding?
Well, okay. Well, can't blame them the way this thing has started today. Kidding. Okay, so offensive line. What Nebraska has coming back, some questions that remain. I think you got three spots that are locked down. Your two tackles and your center, right? Is that I don't think that's a reach right now. You got Brant Banks at right tackle, or not Brant Banks. Bryce Bennett at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Turner Corcoran at left tackle. Cam Jurgens at center. Those are just unless something crazy happens, you got those three positions, I think, locked. And when you look at how the difference in the offensive line play and just the difference in his movement, and you having played offensive line, you can probably speak to this a little bit better than most. Not to take away from Brendan Hymas, who's going to get a shot at the NFL, and he'll probably land on a team, and he'll probably slide down to guard. Corcoran just moves differently than anybody else on that offensive line. And when you hearken back to the glory days of when Nebraska could run the ball, you had that in spades. You had guys like Wiegert, had guys like Shields. I know he played guard, but you had dudes that could get out and move, dudes that actually had some athleticism that you could conceivably see play like power forward. In basketball, you could see them play in other sports because they're light on their feet. They can get out and run. They don't just sort of like tip over. They don't carry any bad weight. I mean, it's easy to watch a game and not focus on an offensive lineman and not watch them and just watch the ball. And that's normally what I do. That's normally what a lot of people do. But like, he stuck out. You wanted to watch. You're like, okay, what's this kid about? You know, you're losing Brendan Hymas. First time a different person started at left tackle in like 4 years for Nebraska. Like, what's that going to look like? It's going to look different. And damn, it looked different. Am I talking him up too much? It's one game. It's Rutgers.
Yeah, it's one game. But no, I'm with you completely. He's got something that's very hard for an offensive lineman to develop or teach. It almost has to be natural, and that's his hip flexibility. He's got great hip flexibility from the tackle spot, and that's what's really important. That's what.
All right, hold on. Go a little further on that. What do you mean, hip flexibility?
The ability to kind of it's hard to describe if you haven't been an offensive lineman, but when you're like sitting back in a pass set, your hip flexibility is very important. So those speed rushers off the edge are able to just always get the corner on you. That's something that he has just naturally within his game, I think, considering he's only a freshman. A lot of guys have to develop that. That was something that I was not good at in high school. I always heard hip flexibility a lot because I didn't have any hip flexibility. It's the ability to sit back in your chair, if that makes sense in your pass set, to kind of keep your weight back, and yet it's hard to describe, I guess I should say, at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday after not having played offensive line for 4 years. It's one of those things that it's an eye test for me, is to be able. I know good hip flexibility when I see it. He's got it. But when I look across the offensive line as a whole, I think that they have guys that are. I mean, I look back to 4 years ago. I don't think they had guys that had the body types to go be successful in the Big Ten. But I look across that offensive line now, and you got guys 6'8", 6'9", 300+ pounds. They're strong. They look the part of a Big Ten lineman now. I think what this offensive line needs to develop is that mean streak. They need to be a little bit nasty in the trenches. I watched Bryce Benhart play last year, and that's what he didn't always do. He didn't finish his blocks, didn't block through the whistle. That's something I heard as an offensive lineman growing up a lot. And I feel like that's just what you heard playing football growing up a lot, was play through the whistle. And that's especially true with the offensive line play. I want to see these guys in the spring be nasty, play through the whistle. I want to see some pancakes maybe a little bit after the whistle, just because that's what that offensive line needs in the Big Ten to be successful and to clear a good path for, let's be honest, Nebraska's undersized running backs as a whole. That running back room, I should say, a little bit undersized. We still haven't seen Marquise Stepp, but when you look at the what type of talent Frost is recruiting to the running back position, you don't want them getting smoked. You want guys that are going to be able to clear a path for them, be a little bit mean. If we get a couple personal foul calls because they're blocking through the whistle, blocking the late, that's kind of what I want from the offense line in the Big Ten.
Yeah, there's quite a few options outside of those guys, outside of the two tackles that we just mentioned.
Yeah, you got guys like Brock Bando, who's been waiting for his chance. Ethan Piper got some good play time last year. Just a lot of guys waiting in the wings. We've heard Brant Banks has been cross-training, playing a little guard, playing a little tackle as well. Really, the extent we've seen him play is in a Big Ten tournament basketball game. So I think there's a lot of guys that have just been waiting for their chance in the offensive line. And I want to see guys win the positions that have that nasty in them.
Nuruddin Nuili, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's a transfer in from Colorado State, went to Norris, originally from Frankfurt, Germany, but he started as a freshman at Colorado State, so he's got some chops there. And then another kid, Ezra Miller, who was originally at Iowa and left the Iowa program. So you have a couple of transfers that could play on one of those inside spots as well. You got some dudes, and this is one of the few times in the last several years where you can say you don't have to just sort of like settle. I feel like there are several past offensive lines where you kind of had to settle, and you were just like, oh God, we got these two good linemen, and then pretty much have to play this guy and have to play this guy and have to play this guy. You know, it didn't seem like you had a lot of options. It feels like you do now. Albeit they're still somewhat young. And you mentioned something too about how, look, the profile of these guys that are playing, nobody's going to be below, like Cam Jurgens is the shrimp of the bunch, and he's like 6'3", right? He's the tiny guy. Everybody else is like 6'5 plus, 6'6, 6'7, 6'8, 6'9. There's pros and cons to that, because when you talk about offensive line and running the ball and leverage and getting, you know, who's low, who's not.
And that's where hip flexibility comes into play, Mark Kraynak. We've come back full circle. And whenever you're so tall, 6'8", 6'9", you're going up against a 6'2", 320-pound defensive lineman. You got to go dig out of there. It's important to be able to get under them and get that leverage and have the flexible hips so that you can stay under them, because it's football. I mean, another thing you heard growing up playing offensive line: low man wins. And whenever you're that big, tall 6'8", 6'9" guy, it's hard to get the leverage under a guy. So that's, again, another factor, the importance of hip flexibility, which I think Turner Corcoran excels at. I think he's going to be a good offensive lineman for this team for years to come.
And you got a couple of freshmen that have a chance to make noise, and it's happened before. I mean, look, Bennett did it, and so did Corcoran. Teddy Prochaska, I think he goes by Prochaska. I know there's some Prohaskas that spell it the exact same way from Southeast Nebraska. But we'll go with Prochaska for now until we're told otherwise. 6'9", 280 freshman out of Elkhorn South. Big-time player, highly ranked recruit. And Henry Litovsky, too, kid out of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
I like the Litovsky kid a lot.
6'6", 320.
The Litovsky kid is a kid that I think is, when I watch his tape, he's got that mean streak, that nasty, and the what I want from an offensive lineman. I saw Prochaska, however we want to pronounce it. I'll wait for the media guide on that one. But when I've watched him play a couple times from doing high school games around ESPN Lincoln, and he's a guy. Do I go back to hip flexibility one more time on this morning? Do it. He didn't necessarily always have the best leverage, I thought, in high school football. And again, it's because being a tall guy, 6'8", 6'9", especially against high school D linemen, some of those guys are 5'10", 5'11". He struggled to get under them at times, but obviously he's a big mauler, 6'9", 280 pounds. He didn't struggle that much in high school. So I think he's got a bit of a learning curve to get back to to get up to the college level, to be playing defensive one lineman, but also, I'm not in the program. I'm not seeing the work he's putting in. But I think he's a guy who's going to have to sit behind the likes of Benhart and Corcoran for a little bit before he gets his chance. But I do think he's a very good option coming up. And another guy, again, who fits that 6'8", 6'9", Big Ten, mean, nasty lineman frame.
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, Elijah, but it was something like, I want to say there were, when Riley first left, there were maybe 12 scholarship offensive linemen or something like that on the roster. Or it was like during his tenure. I just remember there was a very low number, and there was a really heavy reliance on walk-ons at that position. And that's totally flipped now under Frost. For all the drama that we want to talk about or avoid this morning, and the attrition, which we'll talk to Brandon Vogel about a little bit later, which is very interesting. And it kind of makes you think, God, it's really not a Frost problem. It's just a Nebraska problem. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Roster construction has been vastly different. And you do have, it feels like, just a lot more scholarship options at just about every position. And that hasn't always been the case. Because of the attrition, the backfill has not been as good in previous regimes. It's pretty good under Frost. Yes, there's some revolving door stuff going on. Yes, it's frustrating for watching players transfer away, but those positions get backfilled with scholarship players, unlike they kind of did, and they kind of didn't before. You mentioned running back earlier. Let's move over to that position right now. You want to talk about backfilling. You want to talk about scholarship numbers. Holy crap. I believe there are, 7 scholarship running backs? Maybe 6. Listen, hear me out. Ramir Johnson, Marvin Scott, Ronald Tompkins, Sevion Morrison, Gabe Irvin, Marquise Stepp. So that's 6. And then there's talk that a person like Cooper Jewett, Jaquez Yant, could get another spot. So you have 6 scholarship running backs right now. That is a lot.
And
so speaking
of those
drama and departures, by the way, that will not be the case after spring ball.
and of those 6, you look at it, and I hear the names. I'm expecting Stepp to be a guy who's going to be getting some playtime next year. He kind of fits that mold of the Big Ten, Dedrick Mills type, Divine Zigbo type back that has found success within this Nebraska offense. So you expect that Stepp's going to get a significant amount of playtime next year, barring any injuries or setbacks or what have you. But then I look at the other 5, and I couldn't give you one of those guys which to me has risen to the top and has told me like, yeah, that guy's our clear 1B back next year. That's the guy who I think is going to be getting a lot of snaps, because we've found this offense is a lot better when there's 2 running backs that can be productive and get yardage whenever it is needed. I think back to 2 years ago when you had Divine Zigbo and Maurice Washington. You had Divine Zigbo who got yards his way, powered downhill, and then Maurice Washington who was using the lightning and the speed to get downfield and get yardage. Haven't had that since, and it's hurt the Nebraska offense. And I look at that running back room, and I think a second guy has to rise to the top in the spring and show, like, yeah, I've put in the work on the offseason. I'm ready to be that second guy, the guy that we can turn to whenever Marquis Stepp is tired, or even the guy we can turn to whenever Marquis Stepp isn't as effective against a certain defense.
Look, you have 6 scholarship guys and like 14 total, and I hear you. And one of the reasons why none of those guys have stood out to you yet, a couple of reasons, I think. One, they're all freshmen. I mean, they're sort of like non-traditional freshmen. There's a couple of redshirt freshmen, a couple of COVID, everybody gets an extra year freshmen, but they're all listed as freshmen. I mean, literally all of them. Ramir, redshirt freshman. Marvin Scott, freshman. Tompkins, redshirt freshman. Sevion Morrison, freshman. Gabe Irvin, that's coming in, freshman. So, right, these guys haven't gotten a lot of playing time. And then just reading a little bit from Ryan Held this week, the running backs coach, they had some problems last year with COVID in that position group and injuries. And he was not saying this to make excuses. I just want to make sure that's clear, like within the context of how he was answering the question. He was just like, we just never got settled last year, because it was like this guy would get injured and then that guy would get COVID and then this guy. So, it was a very strange year. And I think you had to play players like Marvin Scott maybe ahead of schedule because of that. I think by the end of this spring, that number is going to decrease. You're not going to be able to keep 6 scholarship running backs going into the fall. I don't think there's any chance in hell that happens. 2 of those names at minimum, I think, are gone after this spring. So it's a very important spring to see, to your point, who rises to the top. I think the most likely, just considering where the offense is going, considering the position, the conference that you compete in, it's going to trend towards those bigger guys. I think when Frost first got here, they were trying to copy paste what they had at UCF. Mm-hmm. They're used to Killins. They're used to these smaller, just like, give me the dude that runs a 4.3, give him a seam and let him go. And it hasn't quite worked out like that here. It just hasn't, due to defensive style, due to offensive style, due to, all kinds of factors. Those seams don't exist right now. And I don't think they're going to. And
I'd also say it's hard for a running back like that. They can be successful in a one-off game against a Power 5 team like Auburn with a defense that flies around and hits hard. But I'm just not sure how well those guys hold up in a 9-game conference slate. Whenever you're 5'10", 180 pounds trying to go through the hole, it's a lot different than whenever you're 6'2", 240 pounds going through the hole. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I think Scott has found that while his system was successful and worked whenever they had to go up and play a Big Ten type team, an SEC type team, I don't think it works once you have to translate it over to a full 9-game conference schedule against these teams that really in their defense have guys that are just as fast as these 4.3, 4.4 running backs just in and out there, but they also have 20, 30 pounds on them.
Yeah. And look, it's funny you bring up Auburn. Killins got violated in that Auburn game. I was concerned for his safety. I'm not joking. No, really.
And that's what I'm saying. He
got body slammed a couple times, like literally picked up, by like a 310-pound athletic defensive tackle, like literally picked up, feet off the ground, almost like a cartoon when you like take the bad guy and you grab him by the collar and you put him up against the wall, like that, and then just slam him. I was like, get this dude off the field. Like, he's going to get murdered.
Yeah,
it was horrible.
It worked for the one game, but imagine if he had to go back out and then play, Ohio State or Wisconsin next week. No.
It doesn't work. And so I think that's kind of where I wonder what happens with somebody like Ramir Johnson, who is really highly touted coming in. He's put on some good weight. He's a top end speed guy. That's what he is. Right. But I just don't know if I don't know if his body type works. We'll see. Prove us wrong. But so far in what we've seen of him over 2 years, he hasn't really stuck out. He hasn't really been able to break out and create big plays. I think the two people to look out for outside of, also, I think we should set expectations a little bit with the transfer in from USC. Look, Marquise he's a good player. He's a bruising player. He's 230 some pounds. He's not your game breaker. He's not. I don't think he has that top end like a Zigbo does, or even that Mills did. At least I haven't seen it. If he has it, I haven't seen it. He doesn't have that top end speed. He is much more your bruiser type. And I think you're going to have to complement him with somebody who's a little sleeker, but also big enough, to your point, to take the pounding. And I think you have two candidates there. I think you have two. I think it's Sevion Morrison, who we don't know anything about because we haven't seen him, but we do know he's 6'2", 210. We do know he broke Spencer Tillman's Oklahoma State rushing records. We know he's talented and he was highly recruited. And then Gabe Irvin, the kid out of Buford, Georgia, who on film anyways, to me is sort of like that quintessential running back. He's got good top end speed. He's got good moves. He's got good physicality, good instincts. Doesn't do any one thing great. Does all of it pretty well. He looks like a very instinctive and kind of natural runner.
Mark, we gotta get out of here. I think we gotta get to the rewind with Mitch Sherman.
See what happens when Chris isn't here and we're looking at the official clock. All right, let's do that. Let's step aside. But rewind coming up.
I will say we made it a good half hour without talking anything really all that dramatic. I'm proud of us.
See? And that's going to continue. That's going to be the theme for the rest of this show. Let's step aside. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic joined Chris earlier this week, and we'll play that for you when we come back on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, with Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time to get caught up with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. So I'm headed, I guess your way, Mitch, down in Arizona. You beat me to it, man. Congrats on a little R&R. Thanks for stepping away from vacay to talk some football. How you doing?
I'm well. Enjoying a little bit of time away before spring football and trying. These limited seats are a challenge, but trying to maybe catch a few innings of Royal spring training while I'm down here.
All right, we'll get to football in 2 seconds. When did the Royals bug bite you? I was like 4 or 5, and my dad always just loved watching George Brett. So yeah. I would go to his softball games.
Similar. It was right about the time that the Royals started to get good in the mid-'80s.
Right.
So I was around and old enough to remember the '84 playoff team that lost to the great Detroit Tigers. That was an amazing team and went on to win the World Series. And the Royals were swept out of the playoffs. But in '85, I was all in for sure, and that was what hooked me, I would say. And that was a great year for Brett, and it was a great time to be a Royals fan. Even after that, when things went south a little bit, you had Bo Jackson and a lot of players to root for. So, just a 30-year dry spell until things perked up again the last decade, and hopefully it won't be that long. Hopefully that the Bobby Witt train is pulling into the station, and soon he can help with this core lead Kansas City back to respectability.
it's just always fun to get caught up and watch Royals, and even better in the sunshine in Arizona for some spring training. Mitch Sherman's with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Mitch with The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. It's where you find him. So I know we're a few days removed from the Oklahoma-Nebraska fiasco, and man, what a weird day Friday was, as I got one ear and one eye out to, how real is this with Nebraska, Oklahoma maybe not happening. And then I'm getting ready for state basketball, and I know you were on high alert as well. Mitch, as we kind of distance from Friday, I really enjoyed your column as well on The Athletic, just with the tone this kind of makes heading not only into spring football but beyond for Nebraska football. It's just a hard look, and you're not gonna be able to white this out.
Right. I woke up Saturday morning and I thought, man, that was a weird dream.
Yeah.
But it seemed like that. And you mentioned having one eye and one ear on trying to determine if it was real. I think part of the reason that this was so quiet in Nebraska. Nebraska is a small place where a lot of people, hear a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And generally when there's breaking news or some kind of a story that maybe catches casual observers off guard, there have been whispers about it. And, we've heard it. Other people have heard it. That wasn't the case on this. And in doing some reporting on Friday, I came to realize that part of the reason that it was as quiet as it was, and that this hadn't in any form really leaked out, is because anyone who heard about it on the inside, thought it was so crazy and so bizarre or so embarrassing for Nebraska that it just didn't get talked about. And, I think that speaks right there to the nature of what this was. It was, as you said, a bad look. And, ultimately something that ended all right or, better than the alternative. And, Nebraska probably should send a thank you card to Brett McMurphy of Stadium, because if he hadn't let that cat out of the bag, maybe 2 weeks from now, there would have been an announcement about a game that was scheduled against a MAC team or Old Dominion for September 18th in Lincoln. And you can imagine the uproar, not just in Lincoln, in Norman, but around the country if that had happened. So Nebraska was called on this, and it had its feet held to the fire. And Nebraska did the right thing on Friday by sucking in its pride and saying, okay, this was a bad idea. And I know that's not the way the statement came out, and I'm sensitive to the financials of it, to the economic impact of an extra home game. But look, Nebraska had to pay $1 million to get out of that contract. So there's 20% of your ticket revenue that you would get, ticket and other sales that you would get from an added home game. And you have to consider that Oklahoma was not coming to Lincoln in 2022 if Nebraska pulled out of the 21 game. It just wouldn't happen. There's no way the Sooners were going to do that. They would say, see ya, we'll find another team to play. And there's an economic impact then down the road to Oklahoma not coming to Lincoln for a game that will be huge for the economy and everything that's going on in Lincoln 18 months from now.
When we talk about, where the program's at, you're heading into year 4, got a number of guys back defensively. OU's money. I mean, they are good. They're loaded. They're playoff material. The baton was handed off, not dropped, and you might even have a little faster lap time with Lincoln Riley. The way things have transitioned so well in Norman. But it's okay for Nebraska to go kick off September 18th, and while public embarrassments are no fun for the fan bases and really no fun for the players or head coach, it's okay to go swing for the fences, so to speak, in a measuring stick game. I mean, that's why you come to Lincoln to play ball. That's why you coach in Lincoln, and that's why these matchups are set, because aside from the beauty of the nostalgia and the Oklahoma-Nebraska connection. I mean, people in the college football world want to see this game, whether it's overtime or a blowout. Let's at least see the action, and that's the hard part to swallow, where there's some insinuation. Just turn on social media. Maybe not the best judge, but just the way that Nebraska is being painted in this is trying to duck.
This kind of a game is why you build Memorial Stadium into the palace that it is, so you can get a return date and put your best on display for the entire country to see. And in no way, shape, or form should Nebraska in year 4 or in year 1 under any coach expect that it's going to get its butt handed to it in a game against anyone 6 months before that game is played, unless you're playing the Chiefs. So, Oklahoma's great. Oklahoma is a top 5 team, most likely, going into the 2021 season. It's a college football playoff favorite, certainly a top contender. Nebraska is none of those things, but it has some stuff going for it. And you hear it when you listen to Scott Frost talk about this team that he has coming back. There's a lot there on defense. There's talent on the offensive side, young talent that they're excited about. And even the suggestion that Nebraska is afraid to play Oklahoma, afraid what may happen if it doesn't show well in that game and how it could impact the season going into Big Ten play, is just something that's unthinkable in the way this program wants to be viewed and the way that it has been built over decades.
Mitch, do you read into this at all when it comes to Frost and the confidence he has either in himself or in what he has down there?
I think that needs to be kept in check a bit. Scott's going to have an opportunity at some point to talk about this.
Yeah.
And, going into spring ball, he's going to get asked about it. It will have been in the rearview mirror for a couple weeks at that point, and we'll see what he says. He's got time to formulate the right answer. I don't want to jump to conclusions and believe that whatever happened here was entirely because he's not confident in his team's ability to go to Norman and fare well. I do understand the sensitivities that are at play right now for him in year 4 and the importance of getting off to a good start and heading into the teeth of your Big Ten schedule with some momentum. But the game's there, and it's been there for almost a decade, and it's hugely important to everything that is Nebraska football because it's Nebraska-Oklahoma, because it's 50 years after the game of the century in Norman, because there's a return visit from the Sooners in 22 and another home-and-home series on the schedule almost a decade down the road. There's so much about this game that goes beyond week 3 of 2021 that it's hard to put it all into one little basket at this point. But we want to hear. Everybody wants to hear, I think, what Scott Frost has to say when he does get the opportunity to address what happened here on Friday and in the days leading up to that.
Mitch Sherman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, and can find Mitch with The Athletic. Subscribe there, and of course, give Mitch a follow on Twitter at Mitch Sherman. Mitch, you're going to shift gears, and a story that you've been working on Dedrick Mills. Loved watching him play ball, and really pretty in depth with Mills. Mills opened up about mental health and really kind of bore his soul with a piece he wrote for Nebraska. And you've been able to go a little deeper with Mills and people that have been pretty important in his life, not just family, but also some of his coaches and also athletic director Bill Moose, just with different aspects. And Mills is trying to really help out his family, and obviously his dream's been to get to the next level, but you really do just a phenomenal job of detailing that. Was it pretty eye-opening for you to work on this project?
Yeah, and the last year's been it has been hard for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that we haven't had the opportunity to have those kind of conversations with Nebraska football players that we normally do because face-to-face interactions just haven't happened during the pandemic. It's all the interviews are done on Zoom, and I was able to arrange to talk to Diedrich. It was on the phone, but he was in New Jersey in February, working out, getting ready for his pro day, which is next week, March 23rd in Lincoln. And that's just a huge, huge day for Diedrich because, he is obviously not, Najee Harris. Diedrich's got work to do for sure as a 24-year-old guy to get onto an NFL roster. He may take an undrafted route. He may be a late-round pick. That's probably going to depend on what happens next week in Lincoln. And that's why he's been at work so hard for the past couple of months. I think there were a lot of people at the end of the season who looked at the seniors on the Nebraska roster and thought, man, it would be great to get this guy back, and it would be great to get this guy back. And all fans, should think like that. Of course, you want to have the key players back when there are opportunities for them to come back. But it was a no-brainer for Diedrich Mills, despite his love for Nebraska and what the school has done for him as a player and a person over the past 2 years. He's 24, and he's got a family, a mother, 3 brothers in Georgia, a brother in California who's in the Navy, who's doing the same thing, trying to support his mom, who's been out of work for the majority of this pandemic, and even before that, worked 3 jobs at times when these boys were growing up, single mother in a little town, Waycross, Georgia, to support them and get them to a place where they would have opportunities in life. And he's had an opportunity, and he blew an opportunity at Georgia Tech with positive tests for marijuana, something that he has owned and talked about. And he had struggles in junior college, and he had struggles with mental health in junior college and when he got to Nebraska. So to overcome what he has to get to this point where he's on the cusp of putting himself in position to move on to the NFL, it's an inspiring story. And Diedrich is one of the easiest guys to root for, I would say, all around the country when you take his story and put it all together as we get into this portion of the calendar where players are preparing themselves for the NFL draft.
And when we talk about Mills, and one thing that I look at Mills with, and I go, man, the way he ended his junior season, the run he had against the several runs he had against Rutgers, his final game where he has kind of another Wisconsin-esque type performance when he gets the football. Man, things just went so much better for the offense when Mills was healthy. And I think, Mitch, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mills played hurt last year a lot, and he really tried to gut out as much as possible to help his team out. And I hope NFL guys take a look at that because he's just, you hear the term grinder, and that he is that to a definition. He's been his whole life. And I know you mentioned the ups and downs, but he always just goes to work, and I appreciate that about him.
Yeah, as Ryan Held, Nebraska's running backs coach, told me, he could have hung it up after that Penn State game. Mills hurt his knee early in the Penn State game, went out, didn't play in that game, didn't play the next 2 weeks, and he made it back in December for the last 3 games of the year, but he wasn't fully healthy and didn't even really get to be close to fully healthy until the finale against Rutgers when you saw him go for 191 yards. And it's interesting. He's I don't know if it's a unique kind of back, but he's the kind of back where if he gets into a rhythm, he just gets better and better as the game goes on. And he had a great second half in that game at Rutgers. It was cold. It was physical. Nebraska's offensive line was gaining momentum as that thing went along, and he was the perfect guy to have back there to take advantage of it. Similar in a loss to what he did a year ago, as you mentioned, against Wisconsin, going for over 180. And he did that a couple of times as a freshman, as a true freshman at Georgia Tech back in 2016. He was the MVP of the Tax Slayer Bowl, had 170 yards rushing against Kentucky. So he has that in him. And, I think if you watch those games, you're going to see a guy who's capable of playing in the NFL. Held believes that he's somebody just based on the attitude and the work ethic that he brought to Nebraska every day in 2 years, who will be the first in line to play special teams, all the special teams in the NFL. And a lot of times that's what gets you onto a roster. You get into a training camp and you have that willingness and that attitude and that positivity that he has brought over these last 2 years in Lincoln, and you get the benefit of the doubt, and you make a roster as maybe you make it as a taxi squad. But eventually you get your opportunity in the NFL, and I think his odds are decent, better than 50-50 to get that chance, and I hope he does for him and for all that he's fighting for.
Mitch, we'll let you get out on this. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, Hail Varsity Radio, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. And you're going to want to read the Mills story from Mitch Sherman. Well, brackets, and I know it's vacation, but do you have a Final Four for the folks? Mitch Sherman's Final Four pick.
Well, the committee sure did like the Big Ten, didn't they?
Well, the Big Ten liked the Big Ten.
All kinds of ones and twos next to the Big Ten names. With the tournament starting a day later this year, it's going to be weird on Thursday not to have games. I'm correct on that, right? I've been checked out this week. But.
You'll have play-in games, and one of the the marquee play-in games, UCLA, Michigan State. But in earnest, it gets rocking Friday. Yeah. Right.
I love the Spartans and the Bruins, by the way, in a play-in game. I feel like that's what the play-in game should always be. I know there's a 16-seeded play-in game too, but that 11-seed play-in game. If you can find a couple of blue bloods who are a bit down on their luck any given year, they should automatically be in that game. I want to see Duke in that game one year. I'll have my bracket filled out by Thursday or Friday. I'll say I think that maybe this is the year where the Big Ten is going to show well. I think the Big Ten has been historically good this year, and we'll find out more here this week and next week, because there has been less to learn, less evidence with fewer out-of-conference games, certainly fewer of those marquee out-of-conference games that we normally get in December and a little bit in November. But looking at the Big Ten, it looks so strong, and I was so impressed with Illinois and what it did in Indy over the weekend. I think we'll see at least one and probably two Big Ten teams in the Final Four. So excited to see that and how the league represents itself, and perhaps a shot to get a championship. But I cannot pick against Gonzaga to cut down the nets at the end.
Wow, calling your shot, unbeaten Zags, and the first to do it since Bob Knight's crew in '76. Why not? Mitch, enjoy your time. Thanks for jumping on with us today.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Good to talk to you.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, as we roll into hour number 2. I'm Mark Kraynak, alongside Elijah Herbel. As we have established in this show, it is Herbal, not Herbal, despite the Herbal Essence's Twitter handle. I am at Mark Skurs, if you would like to chime in on anything we're talking about this morning, which we are dedicating today's show to no drama. We are talking specifically about football. We're not talking about Oklahoma Gate. We're not talking about transfers. We're not talking about should Scott Frost do this or that, or the win-loss record. None of that stuff. It's not the drama today.
We did cover a little bit of drama in the rewind, so if you came in Saturday morning expecting drama and you wanted drama, we gave you a little bit in the rewind with Mitch Sherman, but from this point forward, it's back to no drama.
Well, here's the thing. That doesn't count because that was a rewind.
Exactly. It wasn't from today.
No, that was previously recorded drama. And so far we have broken down on the eve of spring football. It's coming, right? Spring football is coming soon. So you'll start to have those regular weekly press conferences. You'll start to have, interviews after this practice or that practice. The hype will begin for some of these newcomers that are coming in. We spent some time breaking down the offensive line and the running back position groups in the first hour, and so we're going to continue our tour here of the different position groups as we get set for spring football, which is a week from Monday. as winter conditioning just wrapped up. By the way, another thing that I'm excited to see if it actually happens. But to close out winter conditioning, Nebraska had its testing where they time everybody in the 40, the long jump, the high jump, not high jump, but the vertical leap, shuttle run, all those sorts of things. And they used to, back in the day, publish all of that. That was like Christmas morning. I mean, that was like a big deal when they would publish, all right, here's, their top 10 guys in the 40. Here's your top 10 guys in the vertical jump. Here's your top 10 guys in the shuttle. All those sorts of things. There is a rumor that they will again publish that, which they have not done. The university has not done that going back to I think it's 2001. But it would literally be a breakdown of all that. So you knew coming into the year, damn, Jay Sims ran a 4.4140. All right. Get that dude the ball. So you might be seeing some of that pretty soon.
And I believe the quote from Frost was that they were waiting to get those numbers up to a place where they thought it was acceptable for Nebraska. So to me, that seems like a way of not doing it while the losing is occurring. If the problem becomes these guys are putting up a whole bunch of big numbers and we're still going 4-8 every single season, then I think you're going to have some angry fans saying, well, it's not a strength and conditioning issue anymore. Look at these guys. They're squatting 800 pounds. How are they not able to move a Big Ten defensive lineman? Yada, yada, yada. So I feel like that's got to be a less so of the strength and conditioning isn't where we want it, and more so the success isn't where we want it, where we can publish these numbers without getting ridiculed. Am I reading into that incorrectly, would you say?
Maybe up till now, but look, I think it helps. You publish those numbers. It sort of helps. Yeah. It breeds competition. It just gives fans a little bit more access and a little bit more insight. And it doesn't hurt. And look, if you keep losing on the field, then nothing that you do matters, right? But
Mark, what if we were testing the Hail Varsity radio testing numbers for the offseason? What would your 40 time be? Are there any radio-specific testing things that we could do to see how well we stack up to our counterparts from across the city, across the state?
I'm pretty confident that I would win the 40.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'd probably clock in at 5.2 at this point.
I'm just trying to get under 6 seconds. I think is a respectable 40 time for me.
My best ever was, I think, 4.8.
Wow,
back in the 18? Day, though. Yeah, it was back in the day. It was a while ago. But I've maintained a lot of my quickness and speed. All right. By the way, we're efforting Brandon Vogel.
We actually just got him. I hear him on the line here. Not to steal your thunder, Mark, but Brandon, it's good to talk to you on a Saturday morning. How you doing today? How's the bracket doing?
The bracket is in decent enough shape. Yeah, I had a hard time for some reason, putting a ton of care and attention into this one. Jacob Dill and I were kind of talking about it the other day, and it's just a weird bracket that I don't love a ton of the matchups. So anyway, nobody cares about my bracket. It's okay. It's in decent enough shape. It's in average shape.
Yeah, well, join the party. Brandon, we have spent a bunch of time this morning trying to stay drama-free, right? Because if you just sort of rewind over the last month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 years, decade, a lot of the times on the show, we're talking very much about sort of off-the-field dramatics, Oklahoma Gate, this guy transferring, that guy transferring. It gets, right, culture, all these things that just after a while they get a little tiring. And spring football's coming. Winter conditioning just wrapped. So we thought we would dedicate this weekend's show to not going dramatic, and instead talking about the position groups. And we've already talked about offensive line. We've already talked about the running back position. Humor us, if you will, and let's move into the wide receiver position. And let's just kind of break down what Nebraska has, what they could have, what's going to happen. So when I say wide receiver position group, and what are the first few things to come to mind in terms of what you think Nebraska will trot out there with any regularity? And do you think it is a competitive position group compared to the rest of the Big Ten?
they have the potential to be pretty big at that position in terms of physical size. And, they've been building to that, and we haven't seen it all kind of come together. But if things go the right way and some players win these jobs, Nebraska has a chance to trot out a pretty big group when you just think about, Xavier Betts and Omar Manning potentially, some of these guys that they have. When I think about, is it competitive with the Big Ten as a whole, it's hard to put them higher than maybe middle of the pack because they just haven't, you just don't have that kind of proven production from this group yet. So they fall behind a little bit on that front.
Talking with Brandon Vogel on a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, size isn't everything. Trust me on that one. But when you're looking at this wide receiver group, what could a little added size bring to the Big Ten? I mean, the Huskers have struggled at the wide receiver position in the past 3 years. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone who follows the Husker football team. So what could a little bit of a size influx do to the wide receiver room, just when you look at the secondaries that they're going to be going up against the Big Ten?
Yeah, everyone kind of associates downfield passing with size, but and that's probably true to a degree. But the biggest thing is at wide receiver, so often you just need guys who can make plays. Which sounds kind of basic, but really think back to, watching high level football. Think back to think about watching Alabama. How many times in a game like that is the coverage pretty good, the throw maybe a little bit off, and a really good receiver just goes and gets the ball. Size helps with that a little bit. We don't associate that trait of winning 50-50 balls a lot with 5'11" wide receivers, and it's not their fault. It's not that they can't do that, but when you look at Nebraska's receivers of late, their leading receivers in J.D. Spielman and Wan'Dale Robinson, they're not sized that way, and they found different ways to succeed, and we're very good. So I think Nebraska has the potential to have a few more guys who could be those just one-on-one winners. Specifically because, they're more conventional 6'2", 6'4".
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and you mentioned it, and the size that you're talking about. I mean, Samori Toure, the kid out of Montana that just transferred in, that has proven to be productive at the Division I AA level. 1,400 some yards. A lot of talk that he would have been a day 3 draft pick had he elected to go into the NFL draft. So he's on campus now. You would presume that he would nab one of those starting spots. He goes about 6'2". Omar Manning goes about 6'4". Xavier Betts 6'2", but with his wingspan might as well be 6'5". So yeah, you could trot out some pretty big dudes. And then I think a natural kind of flex over then from the wide receiver position then is the tight end position. What do you expect out of that? You lose Jack Stoll, who was a bit of a mainstay over the past couple years. But obviously coming back, Austin Allen, and then maybe an influx of a guy like Thomas Fidone, and Chris Hicks is kind of that tweener receiver tight end position. Another area where you're going to get pretty significant size and some decent production coming back.
Yeah, I think they, with the season that Austin Allen had, even though it was an abbreviated season for everyone, was pretty encouraging. Nebraska, certainly the size there, but I think they have kind of. We'll see what Thomas Fidone looks like as a true freshman. I don't want to put too much on him, but I think Nebraska has the opportunity to really create some matchup problems with kind of the fleet of tight ends that they can run out there. You mentioned most of the top pass catching options. Travis Vogel played a ton last year too. Was able to get some catches, but you really kind of, I guess, you didn't notice him on the line, which is a good sign for what they're asking him to do a lot of the time. So getting Thomas Fidone to add to that group it really just kind of broadens, I think, what they're able to do. And, you think about it, that might be one of the most competitive spots on the team this spring, which is good. That's the one. Tight end might look the most like I think these coaches dreamed it could look when they showed up 3 years ago.
Brendan, when you're looking at that tight end position, with guys trying to fill the shoes of Jack Stoll, if you will, I know we have guys that were on the field a lot last year in Austin Allen and Travis Vogel, and you got to think they're the favorites to see some playing time next year. But for the guys looking to get some playing time, what do you think is more important in this offense? Is it the ability of the tight end to be a threat in the passing game, or is it their threat as a run blocker and to be able to clear some lanes for the running backs?
I think the quickest path to playing right away for these guys, I'm looking at the roster right now, and it's kind of shocking. So they brought in 4 tight ends that are true freshmen, 6'5", 220, 6'5", 220, 6'5", 185. That's Evan Meyersick, who's a great athlete, but is the walk-on, so a little bit lighter. And then 6'6", 230 out of H.M. Collins. They have a type there. But back to your initial question, what this offense, I think, needs, maybe not more than anything, because I would still put like a powerful and consistent run game at the top of the list, but they need some big plays in the passing game from somewhere. And, you can look at Adrian Martinez's completion percentage from the clear signs that Nebraska really was either didn't think it could or it just didn't work out. They didn't go downfield very often. And this offense is going to struggle to get to where I think it can be without some big plays in the passing game. So if a Thomas Fedoni or a James Carney can do that and offer some of that, even in, 10, 12 snaps a game, I think that's the guy that gets on the field first.
Well, you're speaking to, the lack of being able to get downfield. The whole point of the spread is to literally spread the field. And Nebraska's been able to do that horizontally, but not vertically. If you do that vertically, it kind of changes everything. So maybe that changes this year. All right, Brandon, I don't want to dive into the position group at quarterback because I think that one's just pretty damn obvious. It's Adrian Martinez, and the question is, hey, are we going to see the Adrian Martinez that we saw kind of towards the tail end of last year that kind of limits his turnovers and is dangerous on the ground, or are we going to see one that's a little more erratic that we've seen in the past? But let's skip over that, and I will not consider this drama because I believe this is statistical, like observational analysis. Something that you have coming up in Hail Varsity. There's an excerpt on HailVarsity.com right now. And it's Nebraska's attrition rate in terms of, the recruits that you bring in, how many finish their careers at Nebraska or how many just bounce out of there. And Brandon, from the excerpt, I think it stands to reason that, if the further a recruit comes from, the further away a recruit is from Lincoln when they grow up, it would stand to reason that, some of those guys would leave because they get homesick or whatever. But the actual numbers that you uncovered here were damn near jaw-dropping when I looked at that. Like, put into context a little bit for us without giving away the entire article, which will hit newsstands this week. Put into context for us, like, just how drastic of a difference it is for a player that's kind of from a local area versus a player that's from, say, Florida or Texas.
Yeah, it was shocking in how almost exactly it looked like you'd probably expect it to. So like you said, it's not upending the model. It's kind of showing that, we talked about some of these recruiting challenges for Nebraska for a long time, and here's some evidence over the past decade, so 2011 to 20 is what I looked at, of the players that have left Nebraska in the past. Like, let's look at it from a couple different angles. And I looked at distance, which you can read on the website now. I also looked at when they committed. And then because I had access to it, I looked at talent based on their 24/7 composite rating. And with the distance piece of it, so Nebraska, for players that are within a 250-mile radius, those players have left at about 18.6% rate, and the overall rate for Nebraska is 40%. You step it up to the next 250-mile rate, it's 22, and then you get to the 500 to 750, it's 50. 751 and more, it's 51. And the thing about that is 49% of Nebraska's scholarship signees have been from 750 miles away or more. So you look at, it's a tough spot for Nebraska because you got to try and get the most talented players you can land. A lot of the major talent centers in college football are 750 or more miles away. I chose to break this just into 4 groups, but I also looked at just more than 1,000. So then you're talking like only New Jersey, Florida, California, the Pacific Northwest, on the rare occasion that Nebraska gets somebody from there. The attrition rate there is like 56%. So, you see Nebraska win these high-profile battles occasionally in Florida or California. And over the past, you have to look at it like odds are that, it's slight. We're talking about 56%, it's not 70. But odds are that player isn't going to finish his career at Nebraska. And so, what do you do with that? You can't stop recruiting Florida and California, of course. It just kind of illustrates, I think, a little bit of a challenge that Nebraska has in recruiting from where it does. And I'll throw this in, too, special radio bonus info. Oklahoma's attrition rate over this same span is almost exactly the same 40% that Nebraska has.
And Iowa's, too, right? Pretty similar?
Iowa's is close as well, yeah.
Brett, I was going to ask, is the solution to this winning cures everything? But based on what you just said about Oklahoma and Iowa, it sounds like you're saying no, winning is not the cure to fix the attrition rates?
I think in Nebraska's case, it might help a little bit just because, well, it would feel a little bit novel. But I do believe, I think from everything that I've looked at, and it's hard to track on a very broad and like overall national level because you really have to touch like every piece of data and kind of compile it yourself. But I think it would be very hard for Nebraska to be very far from that 40% rate. It just seems like the kind of natural state of things.
Yeah, you do wonder if there was more of an emphasis on sort of local recruiting, and I use that term kind of broadly because to me that's 500 miles or less.
Yep.
Chances are your attrition rate would be lower. And it's funny too because you can't necessarily look back at Nebraska's past and say that only the Florida and California recruits are the ones that are the high level all conference type players. Certainly their share. Doesn't it kind of get down, Brandon, to sort of like personality type, right? And how do you ascertain that? How do you figure out like, okay, am I getting an Amir Abdullah? Who, yes, is well outside of this radius and, percentage-wise says that he won't finish his career here, but he is such a grinder and he's such a committed athlete in general, and he's got this chip on his shoulder, right? Like, if you can just find guys like that, you're good, versus ones that are maybe a little bit more Hollywood style, a little bit more flaky. That's kind of the problem that Nebraska is ultimately facing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And Amir is one that stuck out to me as I was going through this and, seeing some names I hadn't thought about in a while. And you think back to so Amir was a guy who felt spurned by the local programs, Auburn in particular. And, Alabama's right there. Alabama's actually a little bit closer to where Amir grew up. He was, even in that Nebraska class that he came in, which was the one that included Aaron Green and Braylon Hurd, he kind of felt a little bit overlooked. So he was a guy who just had a chip on his shoulder, found a coaching staff that, when I spoke to him about it, he felt was really honest with him, which was what he was missing and what he was seeking out. So you do have those. I mean, a lot of this information, what I kind of took away from the whole thing was it's really about borderline decisions. You know, if you're looking at equivalent players and, you know, we think back to the 2020 class where Nebraska got kind of a lot of late ads from Florida, and they were good. You know, they were guys Miami and Florida State offers, high 3-star players. Like, if you can find a similar high 3-star player that's a little bit closer, you got a better chance of keeping him. So I think that could be an application. Like, if I were doing this, if I were using this to strategize recruiting. But for the most part, like, it's just, yeah, you know, we've known for a long time that Nebraska has to travel far and wide to recruit, and there's a cost to that, and the cost is attrition.
Fascinating stuff, Brandon. Looking forward to seeing that article. Appreciate you joining us on Hail Varsity Radio this weekend, as always, and we'll talk to you again next weekend, man. Thanks a lot.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
All right, there's Brandon Vogel. A little bit over time. God, that's just what we're doing here. That's the trend here so far. You know, Chris leaves and we get off clock. Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse, joins us next on Hail Varsity Radio.
Early to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
Hail Varsity Radio on a Saturday morning. Voice guy is lying. Chris Schmidt is not here. Mark Kraynak, me, I am here. So is Elijah Herbel, as we are efforting Gary Sharp. It's hard these days, man. I mean, you start getting into March Madness and all that, and, you know, everybody's schedule's thrown off. We just moved the clocks ahead an hour last weekend. Like, everything's just a little, the weather's getting nicer.
Chris is posting all over Twitter from Arizona. People think he's just like, can't be a Hail Varsity show this weekend. Chris is down in Arizona, am I right? Like, NCAA tournament's going. Just everybody is in like a vacation mood right now.
I know. Have you noticed Chris always kind of posts from that same? He's got this like go-to shot. He's got this like go-to shot where like, you know, the mountains and the palm trees and the golf course.
Makes you wonder if one day he just sat out there and took like 40 different pictures from slightly different angles, like waited throughout the day to make sure like the clouds would be a little different each picture, just so he could have this beautiful picture to like show us, to be like, yeah, I'm out on the golf course right now. Look how beautiful it is. But you guys wish you were down here, but he's actually not. He's like sitting on a recliner inside somewhere, not even playing golf. It's cold down in Arizona. We'd never know it.
Oh, that's a whole thing with like influencers. They've been busted out for like faking vacations.
Yeah, they
you know?
Have you seen like out in Los Angeles? There's this fake plane where you can go pose and take pictures, make it look like you're flying first class somewhere, even though. So like, what you can do is like you can go and ahead of your trip if you're an influencer and take pictures from these this like first class looking airplane thing, and you can save them for later. And then when you go take your trip, you can go fly with the common folk back in the back of the airplane. But then you can post pictures acting like you're in first class going to Hawaii or whatever.
It's all fake, man. It's all fake. It's a fake social media world. You know, that's why we're talking about what's real today. We're not talking about the drama.
Are we comparing Chris to an Instagram influencer here? Is that where the Saturday morning show has gone? Is that what Chris is nowadays? I
mean, he's got a ways to go there. You know, he's got a way. I'm not sure what kind of dollar he would command. But, you know, he's got a chance if he wants to be. Look, he's got good hair. You know,
it's always the hair.
You know, his hair can take him places. He can become an influencer if he wants. You know, and then if he gets enough growth going on, sometimes he's, you know, Antonio Banderas looking a little bit, right? Just a little. So, you know, he's got that opportunity. We have spent today breaking down the position groups, and we have gotten through pretty much all of the offense. I just don't want to spend time on quarterback because I just think there's not like a position battle there. And, you know, unless the kid out of Alabama, why am I forgetting? Logan Smothers. Unless Logan Smothers somehow just lights the world on fire, it's obviously Adrian Martinez's job or bust.
Yeah, and I don't see a guy like Heinrich Harburg, a freshman, coming in and unseating a guy who's been starting for 3 years. As much as I'd like to see Heinrich Harburg be the guy of the future for Nebraska football, I like his frame, I like his size, I like that he's a Nebraska kid. I think he gets Nebraska. I don't see a true freshman quarterback coming in and unseating a guy who's a 3-year starter, regardless if he's showing up early for spring ball or not.
Yeah, I know. Especially coming from like Class C, going to the Big Ten, it's you know, big jump.
But on the bright side, if we're not going to talk about quarterback, it gives us time to talk about a very exciting position battle in the punter spot, right?
Yeah, I know. It's worth talking about. And look, Nebraska has historically been very good at that position. Very good at that position. Recently, no, not so much.
I mean,
been okay.
You could argue Nebraska's been kicker and punter guys like
really?
Alex Henry coming through. You had Brett Maher, who made it for years in the NFL, was kicking some long kicks for the Cowboys.
Sam Cook's still doing it.
Sam Cook's still doing it. You can't count Zerline because he's from Pius, but didn't go to Nebraska. Should have offered him. But then you also have a guy like Chris Brown, who made it for years in the NFL as well.
Yeah, look, Nebraska's been fortunate, and Josh Brown back in the day also had a nice NFL career. So yeah, you've had some really good ones, and it seems like you got this guy Daniel Cherney. I believe it's Cherney. It could be Cerny, the kid out of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And now he comes from a kicking and like punting academy in Australia. Australia has this very entrepreneurial spirit about them, and they have developed this like very intense, very successful like kicking and punting academy, where pretty much the last several like Luke Rosa award winners and the Ray Guy award winners, like a very high percentage of those award winners from college originate from this one academy down in like, I think it's Canberra, Australia.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the guy, punter of the year last year was in the NFL was Michael Dixon. Not related to the Michael Dixon who does Salt Dogs baseball games here in Lincoln, different Michael Dixon, but he was also from the same academy as Daniel Cherney, and he's just, I mean, almost revolutionized the punter spot with how flexible he is. Through his midsection, we'll call it, I guess, just able to get that. I mean, his foot's up above his head, like it's ridiculous stuff, and it's. You remember how like the Australian style punt where they're all running out to the right before they kick it? That kind of took college football by storm 5-6 years ago. But now you have these same Aussie punters just doing a traditional American style punt and doing it better than the Americans. Yeah, and look, Australia is a heavy rugby playing country, so like the foot motion and the foot and the leg strength and all that gets developed. It's also they're big into soccer, big into cricket. But yeah, so it translates, and there's an actual academy where like you go to school there. But it's all about kicking. And the idea is that you get opportunities in the United States, and Nebraska has one of those guys, and he could have figured in last year, but he was hurt. But this year, health, as long as his health is okay, I mean, it's a dude that can just absolutely crush the football. I mean, now, can he do it consistently? We'll see. Yeah, all the while from the punter at Nebraska is kick it 50, 55 yards in the air and aim for a sideline. That's all I want. Let's not jack around with the punt coverage. Let's just aim for a side. If you can land it directly on the white strip of the sideline, it's the perfect punt every time. I just want a punter who can do that or just about that. Even if he doesn't hit the sideline, you're forcing the punt returner up against a sideline as opposed to right in the middle of the field, which is how it feels like a lot of the punts have been going the past couple of years, where then you have to make your coverage go down and make a play. And maybe we have a guy in Cherney who can do that, who can actually directionally punt and hit a sideline. I mean, when you look at this academy, they've pumped out 6 of the last 7 Ray Guy Award winners in college football. Like they're just ridiculous. It's a franchise of sorts of what they're building down there. Just punter after punter after punter is coming from Australia and taking America by storm. Well, I guess they're still punting. I'm not sure if they're taking America by storm, but.
And Nebraska's got that guy. They got one of those guys now.
We've probably after discussing this and saying 6 of the past 7 Ray Guy Award winners, I've probably just overhyped him way too much now. But
it's called Pro Kick Australia. That's the name of the club. So I think you would equate it to like club volleyball here or club, baseball, AAU. I mean, it's sort of that sort of thing. It's like an actual kind of training ground. So
we'll punters are the rock stars of Australia.
Well, let's see if he can grab that position, though. He's the front runner as long as he's healthy. And then kicking wise, it's a similar deal. Like you got to be able to just kind of take the variability out of the kicking game and just boot into the end zone and force touchbacks, right? Like you go back to probably the famous one, the one that started the student section taking off their shoes and holding it up. That was Adi Kunalik. And you could count on that guy to just crush it past the end zone, and there's no return. And when there's no return, that means you have not great field position. And when you don't have great field position, you don't score a lot, and you help out your offense, right? It's sort of that simple. Nebraska's struggled to find that guy that can just kick it through the end zone, through the uprights, even on a good wind day, and just eliminate the entire return game for an opponent. There's talk that this freshman Kellen Meyer could be that guy. We'll see. Place kicking wise, I think you got a good one in Connor Culp. Transfer out of LSU. He's pretty accurate from probably 40 and in. I think he's your go-to guy. He's not a huge leg guy. He's probably not the one that's going to kick a 55-yarder for you. But feel good enough at that position at the field goal spot. But it's really the kickoffs. If you can lock that down, and you can lock down punting, when you look at as frustrating maybe as the past several years for Nebraska has been, imagine if you insert good kicking and good punting into any of the games, any of the 20 games that Coach Frost and his regime have lost. Insert really good kicking and punting into any of those games. I think you reverse 5 to 7 of those losses, maybe more. I mean, it's that critical because look, 12 of Nebraska's 20 losses have been by 8 or less. Right? That's not a huge margin. This is not a team that is getting blown the hell out. It's not. It's little things, right? It's not turning it over. It's not giving up a big return, which happened to Wisconsin a couple times, right? You eliminate those things. It happened against Rutgers, same guy, actually, as the guy, Kraynak, that did it for Wisconsin. You eliminate those things, and, I mean, you're literally talking about a different record. You're closer to 500, if not above 500, if you only insert very good kicking and very good punting. It's that critical.
My question is has the issues on special teams, specifically punt coverage and kickoff coverage, is that the punter or the kicker not putting his coverage unit in a good spot, whether it be a bad kick, a bad punt, what have you, or is it that the punters and kickers are doing what they can, but they're being let down by their coverage team going downfield, not being able to stay in their lanes? I don't know, but after 3 years of not being able to find success in special teams, I sure hope they figure it out soon, and I hope that the answer is as simple as, I mean, on a kickoff, it's always as simple as just get it through the end zone. Don't even put it in the hands of your coverage team. But on a punt, is it the coverage team or is it the punter who's, not getting enough hang time, not putting it in the right spot? The punt coverage team thinks the punt's going right and it goes right down the middle. I'm not sure what the issue is because I'm not within the team, but you would think that having a guy who's a trained punter in Australia for the last however many years of his life, and also let's not forget he's 25 years old. He's more mature than most of these guys on the team. Is he gonna be able to solve that issue, or is it a more fundamental issue within the coverage units? I guess I don't know.
You'll see, but that's why I'm saying you got to eliminate the variables. You just eliminate the variability there if you just put it through the end zone on kicks, especially. Now on punts, you hit it. It's hang time and it's direction. Right? If your hang time's 4 seconds plus, and you're putting it within sort of a 5-yard radius of where it should be, you are eliminating so many variables, and it's a lot easier to cover at that point. One, the hang time's there, so your team is that much closer to the return man. And then two, if it's in the right direction, then you're outflanking the competition there, and you're limiting the return yardage, or you're forcing fair catches. I mean, just literally fixing those two things alone, it's pretty incredible, actually. It's pretty incredible to fathom if you just go back through and look at some of the games and how they've shaken out. If you literally just insert really good kicking and really good punting and nothing else, the turnovers stay the same. All the other kind of things stay the same that make you pull your hair out as you've been watching this program for the past several years. All those things staying the same, you're literally talking about a program that is above 500 and therefore going to bowl games and therefore probably keeping more players and therefore probably recruiting better and therefore not having things like Oklahoma get, right? Like it's the impact of it is monstrous.
And I think this is why. Sorry, continue.
No, you got it.
I was going to say, I think this is why Husker fans watching at home can look at this program and say, you know what, it does feel close. Because there have been 8 losses by less than 8 points, 1 possession, where it's close things, it's little things that you want to bang your head against a wall because you see it time after time, year after year now for 3 years of the Frost program, you've seen the same mistakes happen, costing you ball games. And you think as a Husker fan, you just think there's got to be one of these off seasons, they got to get more of these things fixed than that they don't. And it leads to some wins. It leads to a bowl game. It leads to some momentum. But then the thought creeps into your back of your head. You go, is this systemic? Has this been a problem for 3 years now? Not because they haven't worked on it, but because it's something that they have tried to get fixed and just can't. That's my worry. Is this deeper than, it's just we need one more better player in there to fix some issues? Or is it more systemic? Again, it's another thing I don't have the question to, but after 3 years, it's becoming worrisome to me.
Yeah, and you've I mean, just think about how ridiculous it was a couple of years ago. I believe it was the 2019 season, where they literally had to like put out an APB on campus. Like, you're a student, you probably got that leaflet. But we need a kicker. Anybody, please. I mean, they're doing like an airdrop, like I don't know, 60s era propaganda military stuff where you're like dropping leaflets just trying to find a kicker. And they had to pluck one off of the club soccer team. And for those that don't know, and I think most people do, Nebraska does not have like actual sanctioned varsity soccer. So they have a club team that anybody can try out for and play. I'm just imagining I was on the club baseball team. Okay, like anybody could play. So this isn't even like high level Division I soccer person that you're plucking. And bless him, I can't remember the kid's name already, but like that's how desperate you were at that position because of kind of some misses in recruiting or whatever else. You just literally did not have kickers on campus that could like kick a 25-yard field goal or kick off the ball, and you had to pluck from the club soccer team.
I just imagine Coach Frost sitting like outside the gates at the Maple Leaf Fields with like his binoculars looking at like kids playing intramural soccer, trying to find the ones with the best, looking for the kids that are booting it way over the goal and going, that's my guy. That's my guy to make a kick. Look at him. He missed that thing 20 yards over the goal. That was beautiful.
But I mean, that's what they were dealing with, though. That's what they were dealing. And so I don't know if you call that systemic as much as you just call that like, dude, you just got to get some guys with some legs in here, right?
And whenever you're focusing on like going and recruiting the club soccer team, I guess you can't go and spend time on making sure your punter is kicking it within 5 yards where he says he will, or your coverage team staying in their lanes every single time. You don't have time to watch film whenever you got to go hit Maple Lee at 6 to watch a Class B intramural game. Then you got to head over to the rec center, watch a Class A intramural game. You got your short list of soccer players on campus that you've been scouting for years now, making sure you got a kick. I mean, I'm obviously taking this way too far, but like whenever you just don't have the guys, it can be difficult to actually try to make a change as opposed to, when you're still recruiting, you're still doing all this stuff. I'm sure Scott Frost is a busy guy, but I'm just sick of how close this Husker football team is.
And people forget. It's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget that, and it might even sound like you're enabling or excusing things. But
there was a lot of broken things this coaching staff had to come in and fix.
Yeah, a lot. And now, look, they are far away from Ohio State and being elite, but they're not far away from being in bowl games and being mid to upper in their division. They're just not. That's
a nice last thought for us to end here, Mark. On
I think. We got to step aside, don't we? Yeah. Good stuff today, though, Elijah.
Yeah, fun as always, Mark.
Appreciate you, Damon. All right, that's it for Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Weekend edition. Chris back Monday. We'll talk to you next weekend.
Chris back Tuesday, I think.
I was lying. Okay. We'll see you later.